going on, FA Nation? Welcome to the Fantasy Live DFS NBA live stream. Coming at you with John and Pemba and James Grande as always. James, humongous late tonight, 10 games. You did the playbook today. You've been head down into dirt, just studying all the plays. So much injury news coming out, but a lot of the guys that we were really worried about are playing. So it's not really that poor, right? Like a lot of the guys that we were worried about are active. So kill some of the value we had in mind. But why don't you give us a quick rundown of what we can, what we're waiting for here?
I mean, we just got news. Kawhi is going to be likely active. We're kind of just waiting on Goran Dragic news. I think that's going to be a pretty big one. We would love Tyler Johnson and other guys if Dragic doesn't play. We still haven't got exactly word on if Robert Covington's going to play. There isn't, like you said, there isn't too many people left to figure out. It's just now that they all came out at once. Like Reggie Bullock was a guy that we were intrigued about because that would open up the prospects of Glenn Robinson possibly starting, which still is available, but Reggie Bullock is now officially in the starting lineup. So that kind of, I'm taking a step back with that news. We still haven't gotten official word on Elfrid Payton yet. I know he's closer to doubtful, but he's still questionable. So, I mean, that's really it for right now. But we have a 10-game slate, and I know we have a live read that from one of our sponsors to jump into. So why don't you nail that one on the head real quick?
That we do. We do have the live read. I even have it in front of me this time, so I don't have to fumble around and find it. You guys want the NBA Playbook Pro for free on Fantasy Alarm? Well, Fantasy Factor has you covered. Just sign up for a new account, make your first deposit, and Fantasy Factor will give you the NBA season for free. Plus, for a limited time only, Fantasy Factor is going to throw in the NFL Playbook Pro for the rest of the NFL season too. That's a $400 value for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/factorNFL. That's fantasyalarm.com/factorNFL. 2 Playbook Pros, free, rest of the season. Week 10 of the NFL, so you got, a whole bunch of time left still to take advantage of that. Obviously, James and I have a ton of weeks left for the NBA season to cover, so no better deal right there. Just have to make a deposit and get everything free, $400 value, like you said. James, we'll start off at point guard here. Russell Westbrook not playing tonight, so kind of get to go out, work our way down. Ben Simmons is someone that you and I are always sort of, we go back and forth on. He's always one of the top price players of a slate. For whatever reason, he doesn't usually find himself into my lineups because of that price point. There are other guys that I just always think I feel have a higher ceiling. But again, this is a guy that, is a walking triple-double threat at all times. Robert Covington might not play today, so maybe there'll be some increased usage to go around that starting lineup. Where do you stand on Covington? Where do you stand on Simmons, rather?
I like Simmons, and I think especially with Covington potentially out, I think there will be more offense coming his way in terms of scoring. We know that he's kind of a pass-first guy, a rebound-second guy, and then the scoring is kind of on the back burner. I like Simmons a lot. I think he's going to be lower owned than he should be tonight, and I think that's something that we could take advantage of for tournaments here.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Someone that you and I are both very high on before the Kawhi news was Kyle Lowry. Even with Kawhi Leonard being expected to play, still not official, just probable to play, I still think Lowry's in a good spot here against the Kings. This game could be more competitive than maybe we give them credit for. The Kings have been playing really well. They're going to be at home. Who knows if Leonard's going to be limited at all. And Lowry has, I think it was 9 straight games with at least 10-plus assists. He's got double-doubles in all but 3 games this year. So even with Leonard on the floor, the production has still been there for Kyle Lowry. And we know De'Aaron Fox is not a good defender. How do you feel about Lowry tonight?
I was all in on him in cash in all formats if Leonard was not to play. And I still think he's very viable. Like all the things you mentioned are perfect. I just now lean towards him for tournaments only. Okay. He might actually be sneaky, if you can believe it or not, because, everyone might drop off him and pay down now that we know Kawhi is going to play. And maybe a lot of people think that 8.8 and 8.9 are a little too expensive. Yep. So I think he can check in kind of like Simmons under the radar with Kawhi on the floor. And I still think he's very viable, just more in tournaments as opposed to cash for me tonight.
Okay, that's totally fair. Sort of the middle tier, we'll call it. at point guard. I think there's just sort of some risk to everybody. Jamal Murray is just hit or miss. Last game he had almost 50 points, 50 actual points against the Celtics. If you look at his game logs, it's rare that he follows up a big game like that with another big performance. Also has a tough matchup here against Memphis and Mike Conley defense. Trae Young, you're a big guy against not using jump shooters on back-to-back nights. Matchup against the Knicks is still a pretty solid one, but again, the Young didn't exactly hit value for us last night against Charlotte. Mike Conley, you kind of go all the way down. Goran Dragic, someone you and I both like, but we're waiting on that game time decision. And then if he is active, can you really trust him? Is he going to be healthy enough to really even make it through the whole game? So for you and I think we're kind of really just kind of skipping that whole second tier of guards, sort of starting off maybe at Reggie Jackson and below.
Yeah, so I think if Dragic is deemed active, I don't think there should be limitations because this was kind of similar the other night too, and he ended up playing 33 minutes and going off for 21 actual and 40 DraftKings points. So I think I would still consider him for cash if we do find out he plays. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Reggie Jackson is a really sneaky tournament guy here. He's gone for 20 actual points in 2 of his last 3 games and over 30 DraftKings points as well. He gets the Magic against a diminutive defender in DJ Augustine. And, Magic are without Jonathan Isaac. That's some length that maybe if Jackson drove to the basket can cause issues. Not there anymore. And we know Vukovic isn't the best rim protector. So I think Jackson should be able to get to the basket fairly easily here. And he's not going to be owned by anybody. And then Derrick Rose is just easily probably going to be one of the higher owned cash games plays of the day. It doesn't really matter that Jimmy Butler, it does matter to an extent that Butler plays, but Rose still has a 27% usage with him on the floor and no Jeff Teague. We're going to see Rose up in the 30s in minutes and we know he's going to take the shot. So I think it's 240 total too. Let me just throw that out there as well. And it's obviously not something that we need to overlook. So I think Rose is a really strong cash game play here tonight. And if you want to use him in tournaments, that's fine too. Just know he's going to be chalky. And that's why I kind of provided the Jackson pivot because they're the same price and Jackson's going to be 50% less owned.
Yeah, Jackson's got a 26% usage rate, averaging just under a fantasy point per minute when on the floor this year. DJ Augustine has the 3rd worst defensive rating on the Magic roster, 112.5, behind Vucevic. And I guess Wes Iwundu, if we're going to consider him as even a viable option there. So Augustine maybe the 2nd worst defender on Orlando. So yeah, definitely a big fan of Reggie Jackson there. You have some other interesting sort of punt, maybe value point guards that you're looking at. We looked at Tyler Johnson, especially if we find out that Goran Dragic isn't playing. But you also like Emmanuel Mudiay based off just last game, right? You think this is kind of something we're going to look at going forward?
I mean, if Frankie Smokes is going to shoot the ball poorly right off the start, they clearly have no problem going to Mudiay. And it's kind of something that we've been alluding to all year. Without Porzingis, the Knicks don't have offense. And it's going to go, and now with Cantor on the bench, that even limits them even more. It's Hardaway, and then it's a bunch of guys who are pieces. They're not scorers. Mudiay can score the ball. So I think he provides some value at 3.8K. He may not play over 20 minutes tonight. He may play 30 minutes tonight. We don't know. That's why I'm taking a shot at him in a tournament, especially on a site like FanDuel where you can drop your lowest score. So I think 3.8K is really fine. But how about going over to DraftKings and going to George Hill? I know J.R. Smith is starting and yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, you can't ignore the fact that Hill went for 22 and 42, or for 22 actual and 42 DraftKings points last game. And now, what do we say? Our number one rule above our beds, we read it every night, is attack Dennis Schroeder defense. And that is a code that I live by because Dennis Schroeder is and forever will be an awful defender. So I think even with JR active and starting, it's really hard for me to ignore Hill at $4,000, a guy who can play 30 minutes, and he showed us he can score 20 actual points on a team that needs scores.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Hill is pretty hard to ignore here as well.
No, I definitely agree with you. And he was somebody that, you've called out a handful of times, and last game he did have a big game. Some breaking news here with San Antonio. Derrick White's going to start at point guard. Looks like he's making his debut for the year or close to it. He's got averaging 6.7 fantasy points per game, so not a ton. He's played a little bit. $3,700 against Miami. Again, if you're looking for a punt play, I don't know, maybe Derrick White, someone worth looking into a little bit here.
You know what that does, though, right? By doing that, because they're keeping Bryn Forbes in the starting rotation, that means Davis Bertans will not be starting because they're going to start. They're just going to shift DeRozan down to small forward, and we can assume that means no Bertans. So
because you'll have Aldridge and like Pirtle or something like that.
Yep. So I think that kind of kills any pipe dream of Davis Bertans being viable in any format, especially at his price tag, which kind of stinks.
I still like Bellinelli. I think he's somebody you can still look at. Roll off the bench, pretty safe. He's a shooter. It's a good matchup here, and also makes a good pivot to go to shooting guard because that's where he's eligible. Top of the shooting guard list, Jimmy Butler. Apparently, he's over his depression or about how they managed to lose against the Clippers or whatever it was. His quote was, he's going to play against the Lakers. He put up, I think it was 50-something fantasy points against the Lakers last time out. Top of the price tag for me. I think you can definitely go back to the well with him.
Yeah, I don't hate him. I'm just so lukewarm on him. It's like it's scary to me that at any point this guy can just like shut it down. Like if they're losing by 20, he could just be like, I'm hurt or I'm really depressed here. I don't want to play.
Seems like when he's on the floor though, he plays all the minutes though. We haven't really seen him quit mid-game yet. 39, 35, 36, 37, 36, 36. He had 24 minutes against Milwaukee. His low really of the season. So when he's starting and active and on the floor, he's playing 35 plus minutes.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I just it's fine. It's just a tournament only play for me.
That's fine. Same price on FanDuel as DeMar DeRozan. Like him more?
Yeah, I like him more. I mean, the usage is there. The stat stuffing is there. I mean, he's kind of like taken Jimmy Butler's role, essentially. He's doing everything that we've seen Butler do in the past. So I like DeRozan more. I think more than I like DeRozan, though, I like Drew Holiday and Zach LaVine. Holiday gets a really juicy matchup against LaVine here, or Cameron Payne and Ryan Arcidiacono, whoever they start at point guard or shooting guard, whatever the Pelicans do. I mean, just look at the floor that Holiday, 49, 44, 41, 48, 42 DraftKings points the last 5 games. He just is so safe. There's not a ton of upside, but if you're telling me this guy who's had 8 assists more in 5 straight games while he's scoring 20 points every game, come on. He's so safe. And then we know LaVine, just the upside. We attacked Pelicans wings. He scored 41 actual points the other night. So if the Bulls are going to keep this close, it's on the right arm of Zach LaVine. So, I mean, I like them both more than I like DeRozan and Butler. And I think Butler's going to be the most popular one of all. Yeah.
I can see Butler, especially in that matchup against.
And he's only 8.2K on DraftKings, and it's the Lakers. So
yeah. And again, Butler's price tag has always been better on DraftKings this season. Donovan Mitchell's going to be back tonight. Luka Doncic is going to be back and starting tonight. They're going up against each other. Do you like one over the other?
Yeah, I actually love Donovan Mitchell as a really sneaky tournament play on DraftKings because they underpriced him. I mean, he's 8.5K on FanDuel, so I don't think there is much of a ceiling there. Okay. But 7.4K on DraftKings for a guy who literally can go out and score us 35 actual points on a really good shooting night. Yeah, sign me up. I mean, we're looking for 36, 37. I'm not saying he does this every night, but we've already seen a 50-point performance out of him with 38 actual points. So we know that there is a massive ceiling here. So I think going against a Dallas team that is coming off a back-to-back with fresh legs. I know there's an ankle injury, so it's weird to say that Mitchell has fresh legs, but he hasn't played in 2 of his last 3 games. So, I mean, I think we're going to come out. Mitchell's going to be, off the rip is going to be in a really good groove, and I just really like him. And I don't mind Doncic, but I think I'd rather allocate my funds over to Mitchell's way in the tournament.
Yeah, I want to agree with that. Tim Hardaway Jr. is in the starting lineup tonight. Don't have to worry about him not playing like he did last game when they declared him active. Maybe, I'll bring it up every time they play a team they used to play for. Maybe revenge narrative here. Did spend some time there with Atlanta. this is a good spot for him. I think maybe he's rested up, got a day off. The usage rate with him is through the roof when he's on the floor. He takes all the shots. I think this could be a ceiling game for Hardaway.
Yeah, and I hate it for Cantor's sake, but I love that Cantor's on the bench for Hardaway's sake because now there's literally
1 FanDuel points against Atlanta on opening night in 28 minutes. Tim Hardaway.
Yeah, there you go. And that was in New York, and now he gets to go back to Atlanta, who gave up on him. So, yeah, please sign me up. We're both revenge narrative guys. I know not everyone is, but we are. And, I want Hardaway. I think he's viable for any format you want to use him in.
George Hill has just been ruled out for tonight.
That is wonderful news. So Collin Sexton is definitely in play. I think Collin Sexton is now cashy. And it also, I think this really impacts that game as a whole because
will they let Jordan Clarkson play point guard?
I mean, yes, but the thing is, they want to develop their young players, right? So I think that this not only impacts Cleveland, like from their lineup, I think this impacts Oklahoma City because, Paul George, Dennis Schroeder, Steven Adams, Jeremy Grant, all cash viable plays. I don't think you could play Paul George in cash anymore. Maybe like 10.2K on FanDuel. I think you could play him on DraftKings. I don't think 10.2K is viable.
You think George Hill moves the needle that much?
I mean, he's their only, tell me on Cleveland who scores the basketball without George Hill now. He scored 22 points last game.
J.R. Smith.
John, why?
Because he's in the starting lineup.
Okay, I think that you have a path to Schroeder because he's still cheap. I think you have a path to Grant because he's still cheap. And Adams too, but 10.2K, we have to get Paul George to get 52 points. What if he's only playing 3 quarters?
Yeah. And I mean, on FanDuel, like you said, LeBron's only $1,000 more. You can probably maneuver some things to get LeBron in your lineup, especially if you plan on playing Sexton, like you said, who is fairly cheap. What's Sexton over on DraftKings?
Sexton on DraftKings is, I had FanDuel open because I wanted to see what he was open on FanDuel. He is 4.3K. So he's actually more expensive than George Hill on DraftKings. And you said he's 4,000 on FanDuel?
Yeah.
Do you think Collin Sexton is a cash game play tonight? $4,000.
If he's playing
Dennis Schroeder
30
defense.
minutes, if he's playing 30 minutes, then yeah. I mean, there's a good stretch of games he had, at the end of October against Detroit, Indiana, Atlanta. He put up 26, 20, and 31 fantasy points over on FanDuel. If that's sort of what we're looking at, I think it's doable, and especially if there's no George Hill, maybe he sees increased minutes at the point guard. Hill's missed a game at least this year, right? We should look into that. See how many minutes maybe he played if that ended up being the case. I'll have to do a little bit deeper dive. Try not to get too derailed there. We'll look into that more, and we'll definitely be in the subscriber chat after the live stream. So James and I will update everything there as we hit up roster lock. So be on the lookout for that information. Last thing we touched on was Hardaway Jr. Ken Bazemore came through last night. Finally, one of those Ken Bazemore games that we hoped that would happen, and he came up with 35 FanDuel points. Not the worst at his price tag. Do you go back there tonight against New York? Tim Hardaway Jr. defense.
You can, again.
15 defensive rating.
I mean, he got there last night because he had all the steals and he had a couple blocks too. So
Which does that.
Which is not an aberration. I'm just saying, I don't know, tired legs. I think Atlanta is a team I want to stay away from tonight. Second night of a back-to-back. And I'm not saying the Knicks are great, but it's just they're a young team, second night of a back-to-back. I think Taurean Prince would be the best option for me since he's the only one that didn't play last night. And he's not even starting. Not
starting, but with no minutes restriction. So I don't know what that means. Could be good for the second unit, though, right? If he comes on with the second unit, he's the guy there. So
yeah, he is definitely the guy.
Maybe Prince is still sort of interesting. We talked about Schroeder already. We think he's in a crush spot. Evan Fournier is a guy I've been looking at a lot in this matchup here. Detroit doesn't cover shooting guards well. Fournier is pretty safe, over 30 FanDuel points rather in each of the last 3 games. Still some injuries there over in Orlando. I'm kind of a Fournier guy tonight.
Yeah, he's fine. I think he provides you with a safe floor, and I think that game winner he hit the other night kind of maybe gives him a little confidence boost. maybe I'll break out of this shooting funk.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fine. I like pivoting off him. I like Terrence Ross in tournaments.
Right. Yeah.
He's just going to be a high usage guy. Wes Iwundu starting, but no one cares about Wes Iwundu. He's going to play 10 minutes, and then Ross is going to get his 30. If he just makes shots, he can hit 5x easily. I know he's not cheap anymore, but again, I bring it up again because it actually happened. He scored 50 actual points in a game in Toronto a few years ago. So that's the type of upside. Obviously not. I'm not saying he's going to go for 50, but there's potential for him to score. He's a good scorer. So I think he is a viable pivot off Fournier from that same team.
Yeah, that's fair. Got to go back a little bit just because you're still at shooting guard. With the George Hill news, he hasn't missed any time this year. But when he's off the floor, this won't come as a shock to you. Jordan Clarkson has all the usage rate, 31%, averaging over a fantasy point per minute. Again, I think this could be a GPP Jordan Clarkson spot here. We'll have to again keep that in mind as we continue to move down kind of the lineup builds for today's slate. Clarkson is only $4,700 on FanDuel, so decent price. J.R. Smith's right there, $245. Marco Bellinelli, who we've mentioned, I think $4,400 for him is someone you can still take a look at. Any other shooting guards sort of sticking out to you?
No, Tyler
Alex
Johnson.
Abrines?
Yeah, Alex Abrines is okay. He's going to probably push for 30 minutes, and now he probably gives him a boost, especially if this game becomes a blowout. He probably gets even more minutes. So, yeah, I like him a lot. He's probably my top. And I like JR, but I don't love him. But I like both those guys as the top pivots.
Okay. Small forward, LeBron James, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, the trio at the top here. You've kind of made it known that you don't think George is really viable any longer in cash games, GPP only because of the blowout there. Seems like you're going LeBron, right? If you out of the three.
Yeah, I wanted to play all the Paul George. I think Paul George still on DraftKings is still like really in play in all formats. 9.1K. He definitely can get to 45 even if it's in 3/4. But if I'd probably go up to LeBron now. 240 total. He's very unhappy, clearly. So I think he makes a statement tonight. And Kawhi third, just not that I don't love Kawhi's matchup against literally anybody on this Kings roster, because I don't think Bogdan's going to stand with him, and I don't think Bielitsa or really anybody healed stands a chance. But I think that the upside of George and LeBron just trump Kawhi for me.
Okay. That kind of makes sense. Someone that you and I are both definitely probably interested in, Josh Richardson, continues just to crush for us. 40-point games in 3 of the last 4. Still dealing with some injuries there over in Miami. I think he's another guy that I'm going to be putting in my lineups tonight.
Yeah, I like him and Justice Winslow, both on the same team. I think both could be, if we find out Dragic sits, I know a lot of people are going to go to Tyler Johnson, myself included, but I think both Richardson and Winslow both, at times when Dragic is off the floor, become the facilitators of the offense. So I love Richardson as a scorer and as a facilitator, and I love Winslow's ability to facilitate and play point forward and also rebound.